I have a special treat for you today. I have attorney Benjamin Crump, who we've all seen on TV representing the likes of families like Trayvon Martin,
Michael Brown.
The list goes on and on. Honestly, when we see you on TV, it's usually not a good thing that we're seeing you on TV. I mean, it's good to see you, but you know, what you're representing is...
Well, my personal hero is Thurgood Marshall, and as his legacy, we have to be there to fight for those who can't fight for themselves, those who are the most marginalized, the most just mistreated, disrespected, and that often is people of color, especially young, poor people of color, like the 13 black women I represented in Oklahoma City who was raped by the white police officer, literally Jamal, a serial rapist with a badge that I don't believe ever got the attention it deserved, because they were saying that these women, these sisters, who remind me of my mother and my wife and my daughter, and you know, women who are so close to me, it was almost as if there was no fact pattern, no objective criteria I could give you where that community in Oklahoma would define it as rape. It was like they were unrapeable. Wow. And so when we were able to achieve justice for those women and that serial rapist with a badge, Daniel Holtzclaw was found guilty and sentenced to 265 years in prison.
As follows. Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery and set punishment at 8 years. Count 4, procuring lewd exhibition. Defendant is guilty of the crime of procuring lewd exhibition and punishment is set at 5 years. Count 5, procuring lewd exhibition. Defendant is guilty of the crime of procuring lewd exhibition and punishment is set at 5 years. Count 8, defendant is guilty of the crime of forcible oral sodomy and punishment is set at 20 years.
That was a major, major victory, a major achievement. But you notice it wasn't covered by most mainstream media. And so that's why I'm so happy with what you do with Black Tree TV, man. When we have our own media, our own messaging, where we can control the narrative, it's so important to the future.
Yeah. And how different was that case from the number of other cases? Because I know, like, criminally, Zimmerman and Darren Wilson, like, none of these people were found criminally guilty, but you had to deal with it in civil court on that side. But in this case with Oklahoma, you was able to represent them, and the officer was found.
It's interesting, and so we have to be very careful to make sure people understand. I'm a civil rights lawyer. As a private lawyer, the only thing I can do is bring a civil case. And in instances where Trayvon or Michael Brown or Tamir Rice, all these cases, Eric Gardner, where they're killed, all you can do is sue the police department in the city for monetary damages, which we do, and we win. We always win those. The things we can control, we prevail. But the things we don't control, like whether somebody is going to go to jail or not, that is all based on the district attorney or the prosecuting attorney. And so the only thing you can do is go vote the elected officials out who lost the Trayvon Martin case, who lost the Michael Brown case, who lost the Tamir Rice case, who lost the Eric Gardner case, who lost the Alton Sterling case, who lost the Philando Castile case. I mean, the list goes on and on, where these prosecutors, I believe, aren't really trying to get convictions against police officers when they kill people of color.
Is it true that sometimes when they do charge, they overcharge just so that they know that, or I mean, is that like a technique that they do? I know in some cases it seems like, yeah, of course we in the community know it's murder, but really in the court probably could get manslaughter or whatever. Yeah. But then like sometimes the prosecutor goes for a higher charge and then everything gets dismissed, like in Baltimore, I suppose.
Absolutely, with Freddie Gray. Yeah, a lot of times when you go first degree murder, that's the most serious charge you can bring in a capital felony case. And it's you know, it's a high standard. You have to prove it was intentional and they sought to do it. And, you know, when you have police, normally people give them the benefit of the doubt in American society. So when they do charge with these first-degree murder charges, it makes you scratch your head. But there's a bigger thing at play here, I believe, Jamal. It is what I call the intellectual justification of discrimination. And that is, I mean, it's the highest levels of American institutions of government. It's on the level with the United States Supreme Court, with the Department of Justice. You know, think about this United States Supreme Court in, you know, Gardner v. Tennessee and Graham v. Connor. They say, you know, the police get a free pass anytime they kill mostly people of color with saying 3 little magic words. I felt in fear, or I felt threatened. That's all they gotta do. Yeah. I don't care how much objective evidence you present. I mean, you got video, and still the Supreme Court says, well, if they felt fear, we're not gonna Monday morning quarterback them. And if the police, you know, they got a tough job, and you hear it over and over again, well, how about our right to live? How about our right to breathe on this earth? Doesn't that count for something? So you have the highest levels of government institutionalizing and justifying the discrimination when it comes to people of color. And that's a bigger battle than even these prosecutors who I think are just following what the higher ups do. And like the police are the low people on the totem pole. Yeah. I mean, the prosecutors, the judges, and all of them are participating in this genocide, this, you know, genocide of black people on many levels. When you think about how they kill us in the courtroom after they assassinate our children on the streets. And I can just give you example after example. You know, when you think about Trayvon Martin case, it did seem like it was a fish out of water experience for them to be justifying the dignity and the honor of a young black man versus trying to lock him up and throw away the key. Yeah. You know, and then Michael Brown, my God, how the prosecutor just changed all the rules when it came to grand jury proceedings because, Jamal, you and your audience on Black Tree TV should know that in grand jury proceedings, when you go in courtrooms, man, the grand jury 99.99999 to infinity normally gets the grand jury to return an indictment whenever they want it. Whenever they want one, they get it. Yeah. But when it's a young black person lying on the ground, a black or brown person, and the police are the killer, then they can't ever get an indictment. I mean, I don't care if you got video or whatever. Well, the grand jury, they didn't agree to charge the police officer. But what Michael Brown did that was so unique, it gave us an opportunity of something we never see. It gave us the insides and the inner workings of a grand jury proceeding. Because remember, the only lawyer in the room is the prosecutor, and then you got 30 or 40 regular citizens. And so they normally gonna do whatever the lawyer in the room tell them to do. If they want an indictment, they'll get an indictment. If they don't, they won't. And so Michael Brown, the prosecutor, Bill McCullough, he kept saying, Bob McCullough, he kept saying, oh, we just want to be fair. We just want to be fair. He kept going over and over again. You know, we in Ferguson fighting for Michael Brown, this 18-year-old kid who had his hands up, was shot in broad daylight. They let his body lay out on the ground for 4 hours. His mother and father out there trying to get to their child, offer him some humanity. They got the police tape and dogs won't even let them get to him. And this prosecutor keeps saying, we just want to be fair. We just want to be fair. We're going to let everybody testify and everything. And it all sounds good if you're not woke and you don't understand what's going on. It sounds real good, this whole idea, oh, let's just be fair. I want to be extra fair. I want to let everybody testify. I'm going to even let the police who assassinated this unarmed teenager in broad daylight, I'm going to let him testify. And they did let him testify for over 2 hours with no cross-examination. And you think about this here. There have been black people who have been charged with crimes. And there's a famous U.S. Supreme Court case where the young black man said, I'm innocent. I didn't do this crime. I didn't do it. Let me testify before the grand jury. I didn't do it. They said, no, you can't testify. So he gets convicted for 7 years. And then when some good lawyers helped get him out of jail, he then sues the prosecutor's office. And it goes all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And Justice Anton Scalia, of all people, authors the opinion. And what he says is, to this young black man who's been wrongfully incarcerated, who asked to testify to the grand jury, he says, well, the purpose of the grand jury is not for the opportunity to offer exculpatory evidence or put forth your theory of your defense. It is only to form the basis for which the foundation is laid where they can charge somebody with a crime. Now just suppose that with Michael Brown. While this guy was able just to turn all the rules over to benefit the police officer, the killer cop who killed Michael Brown, but when young black people try to say, well, let us testify in the grand jury, you say, no, that's not appropriate. That's what I mean when I say the intellectual justification of discrimination. It's like reverse engineering justice. We figure out the outcome we want, and then we just go make arbitrarily the rules of what it is. So I can go on all day about that because I live it every day in courtrooms all across America, man.
You know, one thing that I've noticed, like with all these killings, and we've seen like a lot more evidence of this lately, is that the killings is one innocent person, unarmed person getting killed is too many. To me, the everyday person that gets the police called on them at the Starbucks or at Yale or whatever, who may have a result of that, a lifelong result from their interaction with the cop, that might have lived, might not have got beat up, might not have got shot, but that interaction with the cop or going to jail or whatever might have a lifelong impact on these people. I think that we focus on these killers because they're extreme and they're brutal, and you see what you see the thing on camera. But I think there's a huge problem with just the everyday interaction, and there's so many people that, you know, whose case doesn't get the limelight or whatever, that's been derailed over madness.
Jamal, you bring up a lot of interesting points, and I know we're going to talk about evidence of innocence in a short while here. That's about the ultimate miscarriages of justice, where you have completely innocent people being put in prison for crimes they didn't commit for decades, all these young black and brown people. But just to speak directly to what you said, man, I go around and I speak at universities and law schools and, you know, civil rights groups, all these, even these white organizations that I go speak to. And I've always tried to do what my mother and my grandmother taught me. And they said, if you get an opportunity to speak truth to power, you do it, baby. You speak truth to power. And what I tell them is that it is terrible how Trayvon Martin was killed. It's terrible how Michael Brown was killed. Terrence Crutcher in Oklahoma, Tamir Rice, and 12 years old in Cleveland, you know, Philando Castile in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Corey Jones in West Palm Beach. I mean, I tell them, it's terrible what happened to them. But I submit to you, it is far worse what happened in courtrooms every day in America. Any city you go to, don't take Ben Crump word for it, you just go sit in the back of the courtroom and you watch how it's bad when they kill us on the street corners, but it's even worse when they kill us in the courtroom with these trumped up felony charges. You have little black and brown people and you have white people have the same fact patterns, very similar fact patterns. You have little Billy and little Becky, these young white people, and they get a slap on the wrist. But then you have these black people, you know, Shaniqua and Leroy, whomever, they have similar fact patterns. And they never get the benefit of the doubt, the benefit of possibility, the benefit of consideration. They get taken over to the corner, they get fingerprinted, and they get handcuffed, and they get convicted of these trumped up felony charges that they now have to wear on their backs like a cross for the rest of their lives in this information age, where you have this felony conviction out. If you're a young minority and you're trying to get a decent job and you got a felony conviction, you know how hard the odds are stacked against you. I mean, Jamal, it's these collateral consequences. When you took the plea deal because you was facing a Hobson's charge, we'll give you 6 months in jail if you plead to it, or if you go to trial and roll the dice against a jury of anybody but your peers, and you get convicted, we're gonna put you away for 15 to 25 years. So the young brother or sister, they take the plea. And so now they say, well, at least I'm not gonna be in prison, but now you can't get certification to be a teacher. You can't get certification to be a real estate agent. You can't get certification to be a nurse. In many places, you can't live in government housing. I mean, the collateral consequences are great, not to mention jury selection, not to mention you can't serve in the military, all this stuff, you can't vote. But then, I mean, you can't even get a decent job because you can't ever get certified for anything. And on top of all of that, in many states, Jamal, if you are a convicted felon and you serve time in prison, you can't even get life insurance. And so, even though you're not dead, it's like you're the walking dead. You just ain't got the death certificate yet. And that's what they're doing to us every day in courtrooms in every city in America.
Man, this is just too heavy, man. But we gotta keep this conversation going. So we're gonna take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're gonna talk about the evidence of innocence.
Yes, sir.
And some more of this tragedies that's going on, man, and how we can fix it.
Hey, and we can't fix it, man.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Now stay tuned.
Today in America, there are thousands of men and women in prison for crimes they didn't commit.
I'm handcuffed, placed in a police car.
They slammed me on the car. They said you're under arrest for murder.
Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law.
True stories of men and women who were wrongfully convicted.
I spent 15 years.
12 years.
27 years in prison for a crime that I did not commit.
I didn't do it.
People who fought to reveal the truth.
This is a wrongful conviction.
There's DNA in this case that needs to be tested.
And win back their freedom.
I got to right this wrong.
Why did they do this to me?
I'm about to die in prison.
I didn't want to be here.
My family was behind me, and the system was in front of me.
Despite evidence of innocence.